Hi, English 102 students. It's Lindsay Hickman. How are you doing? I hope this week will bring some sunshine and some cheerfulness to our quarantined life. But this week we are going to be talking about the Synthesizing II badge. This is a badge that I believe will help us when we continue on with our next paper for Read Jane. And I think it will help us in general just learning how to combine things that we want to summarize or quote or learn about in general when we write. So, this is the directions for our Synthesizing II badge. The purpose is to demonstrate the way in which summarizing and paraphrasing can be used when synthesizing sources. Upon completion, you will be able to synthesize what others have said about a given topic as you articulate your own perspective on the matter. So we're going to click here so we can see all the directions. If you did English 101, if you took English 101 at Coastal Carolina University last semester or previously, you've probably done the Synthesizing 1 badge. And I know that we've all done a summarizing badge before, so we want to understand that summarizing and paraphrasing are really important to combine the ideas of multiple sources. So just remember that when you're synthesizing something, you're trying to take an idea from chapter 1 of Read Jane and chapter 5 of Read Jane and synthesize them together to try to make your point. Okay? So, one of the main points to remember about this badge, and remember when writing anything for this class, and this is something we all still can struggle with, is that we have to cite, okay? Just like this example, we have to make sure we cite things. Even if it's in the same book, even if everyone knows the book that we're talking about, this is something that we still, I believe, all struggle with when working on icing any kind of quote, any kind of information. We don't introduce or we don't cite. Um, Many people struggled in our previous badge because they struggled to just say in the book Jane Eyre, or they forgot to put Bronte page number 10 or 150, whatever, in the quotation marks. So just remember when synthesizing, all these badges are building on each other. So don't forget to ice and include citations and introduce what you're talking about. So this page gives you some great information and instruction about synthesizing. It does not deal directly with our book Read Jane or even Jane Eyre, but it still shows you how to format it correctly and what we're looking for. Okay? So what you want to do, we're going to scroll down so we can see this right here. This is a really good idea of paraphrasing in synthesis instead of quoting. And then right below it is an example using quotations themselves. This is something that you can decide for yourself to either quote directly from Read Jane or if you want to paraphrase. But remember, even in both of these examples, they are citing. So right here, Peter Elbow in Writing Without Teachers, that's the text. And then this is the paraphrase, but it gives you the page number, okay? Same thing with quoting. In writing to be read, which is the text, there's the quote, and there's the page number. They even give you two different ones so you can see, okay? So, the assignment is you can take your Jane Eyre paper, you can take your previous paper, just one of those things that you worked on for this class, and look at something that you could synthesize. So what the main points you want to look for when going through your papers, and it could be either paper, is you want to find a paragraph that has at least two different sources, different quotes, different paraphrases. If you have not done this, and I think most of you probably have because we've asked you to quote in I think every paragraph for each of the papers we've done. But if you haven't done this, you can type up something about Read Jane, just about what you've read so far. Then what you're going to do, you're going to write or type up this paragraph, copy and paste it into a Word document, and mark up the work by underlining signal phrases, which introduce you to sources. Bold the places in the paragraph where you're quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing. This is the section that I think should be easiest if you do take a previously submitted paper that we've done in class, because I know everyone has quoted in their papers, and many of you have paraphrased as well. So this should be a pretty simple step, and just bold the text that you've quoted, paraphrased, or summarized. Then you want to italicize the new perspective you have to extend the source ideas or to connect it to another source. So when you do that, you might already have done this in the paper. I doubt it though. So you're allowed to edit this paragraph. Then capitalize the phrasing that characterizes the relationship between the two sources. Sorry for coughing, guys. I've got pollen is just hurting me today. So that's your first step. Underline signal phrases, bold, quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing that you do in the paragraph. Italicize a new perspective by adding in another source or connecting two sources within the paragraph itself, and then capitalize phrasing that characterizes the relationship between two sources. Okay? Sorry, guys. So now that's just step one. You still have to do step 2 and step 3. And that's one thing I don't want to have to bark and be on you guys about, but a lot of you are not doing all 3 steps, and that's what's hurting your grade. So you got to do all 3 steps. Make sure that you looked at the work you did, you see if there are things that you can improve and make additions, revisions, or just to make sure that you have synthesis in that paragraph. And then step 3, which a lot of people I've noticed have tried to like trick me in believing you're doing step 2, but you're just doing step 1 and step 3. Step 3, a lot of you are doing the reflecting, but make sure you do that step 2, because if you don't do all 3 steps, you're not going to pass the batch. So just keep that in mind, Okay? Just make sure you do all 3 steps. Now, we are going to look at a attempt at synthesis that I bet you did not even realize was an attempt at synthesis. So this was from last week's forum post, and it was all about, while reading Read Jane, talk about at least 2 words you don't know. Okay? So Jack did this forum post that was actually a really good attempt at synthesis, because he describes the word nunchi, cites and shows that it is on page 77, and actually uses quotes. He then uses another phrase and another quote on page 97. This is a very good post. It's actually really funny. Jackie did a good job, but we have to remember to introduce. I know that this form said that this was going to be about Read Jane, but make sure in your actual assignment you put one word that tripped me up in the novel Read Jane is the word nunchi. On page 77, it is used when Jane says, continue on. This helps introduce the quote and introduce the book. I know that all of us realize we are reading this book, but if you don't introduce and you don't quote, that can be a sign of plagiarism. So make sure to quote, okay? Make sure to include in the book Read Jane, in the novel Read Jane, in the text Read Jane, however you want to do that. And then, but this is a really good way to show there are 2 different words that Jack is having trouble with that he did not know the meaning of right off the bat. So this is a really good example. Now, I know this is a forum post, so it doesn't have to be that formal, but if we look at this and see how it can be improved, we can see that he has 2 really good quotes, and he obviously gives us 2 words that most of us don't know, this one and this one. So we want to show the synthesis of these 2 areas in this form. And by doing that, if we use the icing badge, if we use those skills and we use summarizing, we're able to combine those to show that Jack doesn't understand either one of these words and what his final conclusion was in finding out what they meant. One thing I will say that a lot of you did was you were able to find what nunchi meant, but you did not tell me where you found it. So just remember for this badge to cite your sources, even if it's a dictionary, if it's the book itself, if it's Google Dictionary, if it's anything like that, and just to help us realize that you can cite, you know how to cite, and we know where the content is coming from. Okay? So, this week's assignment, synthesize. I think you all can do this. I think that you all have probably already began to do this in some of your papers. So let's just try to get this done. And if you have questions, you know you can contact me and we can go over this together. If you want to start your badge, work on it, have a team meeting with me, and we can discuss it before you turn it in. That's great too. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.